In today's video, we're going to talk about budgets and forecasts. Firstly, what's the difference between a budget and a forecast? Whether you should have a push budget, the common mistakes a business owner or businesses make regarding budgets and forecasts, and what great business operators do regarding their budgets and their forecasting. Firstly, what is a budget? A budget is a process that, if done properly, you go through prior to the start of a period of time, generally either a financial year or a calendar year, and you set out a plan and objectives of what you want to achieve over the next 12 months, knowing what you know today. Ideally, in a budget, you want to aim for something that is realistic, but at the same time, you're pushing hard to achieve it. For example, do you want to grow 10, 15, 20% in a year? You're going to have to work hard to achieve that. But if you're a business that's turning over, say, $10 million and you're going to grow by 100%, there's going to be a lot of resources that need to grow into that growth by 100%. That might not be a realistic budget to hit for that next financial year. For a budget, think about what are the goals you want to achieve and how you're going to achieve them. What are the additional investments you're going to make? What are the things that we're going to do differently? What are the things we're going to stop doing? What are the things we're going to start doing over the next 12 months to get us to where we want to go? That is essentially a budgeting process. And as a business owner, if I come to you as the CFO asking you to spend an extra dollar, the anticipation is if I'm asking for $1 from you today, you're going to get $2 or more back tomorrow as a result of that investment in whatever area that is within your business. We can then use this as a measure of success in holding our team accountable on an ongoing basis. Let's look at forecasts. Forecasts can also be referred to as projections. Forecasts are more dynamic in nature. If we use the weather as an example and we compare that to budget and forecast, a budget is along the lines of, hey, we expect it to be warmer in the summer months and cooler in the spring months, and it's going to be wetter in the winter months. That is a broad budget, and you can expect these certain levels or anticipate these levels over the next 12 months. A forecast is more dynamic, it is more short term. We're more likely to be using very specific and real data. For example, in a budgeting process, we might budget in July to do $1.2 million worth of revenue. When we're sitting in June, we might have some information, or we will have information regarding our pipeline, what our marketing is like, what our lead generation is like, and that might say, hey, we're going to actually do $1.3 million this month, or $1.4 million this month, or if it's looking negative, we might be doing $900,000 or $1 million. So what the forecast or the projection is designed to do is it's designed to give us an up-to-date understanding based on the information we know today, what we anticipate to happen over the coming months. The forecast is a more dynamic way of looking at the world and is designed to complement your budget. A budget you'll do once a year, a forecast you should be updating monthly with your CFO. Now, depending on the type of industry you're in, will depend on how accurately you can forecast and what your degree of confidence is. For example, if you're a business that's in, say, construction, where it's more longer projects, you can probably project with a pretty high degree of confidence the next 6 to 12 months because the work you're going to deliver over that period of time, you've probably won that work already. However, if you're a more box in, box out business where you're dealing with day-to-day transactions, you might not be able to project out with as much confidence because you're more contingent on day-to-day activities. Your projection period for those periods either might be a shorter period of time or you might have to make greater levels of assumptions to build that forecast. Where do business owners go wrong in their budgeting and their forecasting? Firstly, they can confuse their budget for a forecast. Unless there is a grand reason why, like a massive fundamental change in the way a business operates, your budget should be set at the start of the year and then you use that as a reference point as the year progresses. Because you can look and go, oh, the reason we're up is we're doing more of this, or we're doing less of something else that wasn't working as ideally as we anticipated, or we've invested more in marketing, or understanding, hey, we haven't spent as much on labor as what we expected because we haven't had the same amount of sales. It's a reference point based on what we wanted to do at the start of the year to help us with upcoming planning and decision making. That is not to be confused with the forecast. The forecast is going to help us with day-to-day decision making depending on what's happening in the market and market conditions at that point in time. Another example where businesses have challenges is where they don't have a realistic view of the market and market conditions. An example of this is having a budget that is too highly inflated. For example, too much expectation on revenue relative to what the reality is going to be. You might be budgeting and planning for $2 million in revenue, but in reality it's going to be $1.5 million. We need to make sure in those situations we have labor and a cost structure that reflects the $1.5 million, not the $2 million. And vice versa, if we're budgeting and planning for $1.5 million, but we actually think we're going to do $2 million, do we have the resources to deliver that work, or are we going to lose on opportunities as a result of not having those resources available to us? And the most common error is the metaphorical budget sitting in the top drawer for the whole financial year. You do it in June or December, January, depending on what time frame you're doing it for, and then you forget about it. You don't look at it, you don't compare it as a reference point, you don't hold your team accountable for it. That is the challenge we see around particularly budgeting. And then lastly with forecasting is your business just doesn't do it. It doesn't hold themselves accountable to a forecast. And you can get a lot of intelligence around forecasting as well. A question we get quite often is, should we have a push budget? So we have a budget based on what is realistic, but a sweat. We have our forecast or our projection, but also do we have a push target? Do we share another message with our team that we want to get out there? A push budget is taking the budget that we've already developed one step further. A push budget is when we make a decision and go, if all the planets align and we actually can get ahead of what we anticipated on the budget, what additional things would we invest in? What would we do differently? And what would the targets then be if we achieved a certain level or result? When asked this, I go, what is the purpose of this? Is the first budget just meant for the management team as a starting point, and the push budget is the budget we're going to share with the broader team? So for example, we might have a budget within our senior management team of $10 million of revenue, but we don't share that with our sales team. We tell them the sales budget is $12.5 million, for example. What is the purpose of that push budget? A good example of where we've seen push budgets used is if we get to a certain level of performance that is beyond what we anticipated for the first quarter, what will we do? So if we're anticipating growth of 15%, say, through the first quarter, but we actually end up doing 25, 30% and we think we can sustain that, that is where a push budget can come in handy, because there might be additional investments that you're willing to make at that push level versus that baseline budget. However, I'd be very conscious of how this is communicated to the team and also who you communicate this to. We want to make sure that whatever you're aiming for at its lowest level, for want of a better phrase, is still success for the business. We never want the team thinking $10 million is the target, when in reality the target should be $12.5 million or vice versa. You can get the team disenfranchised and lose connection between what the target is and what we're actually aspiring to do. My summation on push budgets: they can be powerful, but if they're not executed correctly, it can lead to miscommunication and misalignment between the management team and other departments within your business. It needs to be very clear as to what the targets and parameters are, and then at what time we would look at pushing to that push level of budget. This leads me to what elite businesses do. They get very intelligent on their forecasting. So for example, if they forecasted for 1 month $1 million, they then compare what actually happened versus that forecast. How good are we at predicting the future versus what actually happens as a result? Elite businesses set realistic budgets, but as I said, the realism is covered with sweat. That sounds really funny, but you want to create a realistic budget that you know is going to be a challenge for your team to achieve, but not an unrealistic challenge. Elite businesses are also adapting all of the time. Depending on what information they're exposed to, they're adapting their plans and their forecast, and then as a result of that, their business based on what their forecasting is showing. And most importantly, they keep their leadership team aligned with the budget and forecast, making sure we're adapting and changing. You'll see a common theme here. A lot of it is around having the most up-to-date information and adapting and changing our plan based on the information that comes to hand. It's almost like fighting a war. You start with an initial plan and then you adapt that plan depending on what happens with the opponent. And the opponent in this case being what's going on in the market, what's happening with our sales, marketing, and opportunities that we're creating. In summary, the budget is the plan at the start of the year. The forecast is looking at what our trajectory is based on the information that we have today at any point during a year or over an elongated period of time. And our push budget is looking at if we achieve certain objectives within our budget during a period of time, can we push beyond that, and do we communicate that message to our team that the parameters have changed and we're willing to aim for a higher target but invest more to achieve that target. Most importantly though, avoid those traps. Firstly, with budgets, the trap is the budget just sits in someone's Excel folder and never gets looked at. The issue or the challenge with forecasting is it doesn't get done methodically and consistently. And the issue with push budgets is it's not communicated clearly to the team in relation to what our budget is. If you want somebody to fact check and review your budgeting and forecasting process, that's something that we specialize in at CFO Dynamics and help you not just get in the weeds and understanding of where your business can improve, but help how your business can execute that plan and achieve your financial goals.